Come in, Rafe. Thanks for coming up. You're the backbone of the floor downstairs.
And yet...
Rafe, the director role needed a longer strategic vision. This is no criticism of your numbers. I will lean on you greatly in the coming months. Your accounts, your contact.
Tell me your side.
We are moving on to the Hargrove account. Their renewal is next week, and I will need you to handle it.
You did not call me up here for a partnership. You called me to hand over 5 years of my work so you could wear my name like a coat. You have it backwards. A man in my position is the only kind who can walk away.
The cardboard box sat empty on Rafe Calder's desk, while the chairman's niece explained, in a voice smooth as poured cream, why the promotion he had earned 3 years running would be going to her instead. She said it kindly. That was the part that stung. She smiled. She thanked him for his hard work. She called him the backbone of the floor. And then she slid the nameplate that read, Regional Sales Director, across the glass, turned it to face herself, and set it down like a woman planting a flag on land she had never once walked. Rafe looked at the box. Then he pulled it toward him and began folding the flaps. That was the moment the whole floor went quiet. 3 hours earlier, Rafe had eaten a cold breakfast standing at his kitchen counter because both his children needed him at the same time, the way they always did. Ren, who was 9, couldn't find the math homework he'd finished the night before. The little one, Posey, 4 years old and stubborn as a fence post, wanted her hair in 2 braids and no fewer, and would accept help from nobody but her father. He was 38, broad through the shoulders, quiet through the eyes, and tired in a way that sleep no longer touched. For 5 years, he had been the top closer at Meridian Freight Solutions, a gray box of a company in a gray box of a building, selling shipping contracts to men who never said thank you. For 3 of those years, he had been the #1 salesman in the entire region. Not once had anyone outsold him. Not once. He was also raising 2 children alone. His wife, Sarah, had died 4 years back, an illness that gave them a single autumn to say the things people spend whole lives putting off. Since then, Rafe had run his mornings like a shift he could never call in sick for. Up at 5, coffee black, lunches packed in paper sacks with a note tucked inside each one, because Sarah used to do that, and he could not bring himself to stop. Braids for Posey, a reminder for Ren to bring his coat, drop off, then the long drive downtown, then his desk on the 4th floor before anyone else had switched on a light. He was never late, not in 5 years. The people who sat near him knew the quiet arithmetic behind that one plain fact. The babysitter paid in careful envelopes, the school calendar memorized, the nights he stayed up past midnight so his days could hold together. There was a woman at the school gate, a teacher named Della who ran the early drop-off room, brown-eyed and calm, with a way of kneeling down to a child's level that made the frightened ones stop crying. She had noticed the notes in the lunch sacks once, when Posey proudly showed her the one shaped like a folded bird. "Your papa writes you letters," Della had said, and looked up at Rafe a beat longer than she needed to. He had nodded and hurried off to his car, the way a man does when he has stopped letting himself notice things. But he remembered the look. He told himself he didn't. His neighbor, old Mr. Bellamy, watched the children some afternoons and refused most of the money Rafe pressed on him. "You re-roofed my shed in the rain," Bellamy would say. "You let my kids track mud through your house," Rafe would answer. And that was the end of it. It worked. It was tight. Tight on sleep, tight on money, tight on the hours in a day. But it worked. Rafe had a plan, and the plan had a shape. Top the region 3 years running, and the director's chair was his. Director's pay meant a house with a yard instead of a 3rd-floor walk-up. It meant Ren in a better school. It meant, someday, a Saturday that belonged to his children instead of his desk. He had done everything the plan required. He had done more. and then the chairman's family arrived. Meridian was owned by a man named Orson Vale, silver-haired, 70, sharp as a tack behind a face that gave nothing away. He had built the company from a single leased truck 40 years earlier, and still came to the office most days, though he mostly watched now. And that spring, Orson's grandniece came to watch with him. Celeste Vale was 29. She had a business degree from a school with a famous name, a wardrobe that cost more than Rafe made in a season, and a way of speaking that made every sentence sound like a favor. She had never sold a contract in her life. She had never made a cold call, never eaten lunch at her desk to save a client, never stood in a loading yard in the rain to shake a foreman's hand. But she was family, and family, at Meridian, turned out to be a kind of qualification all its own. For 6 weeks, Celeste shadowed the sales floor, which meant she stood behind Rafe's chair and watched him close deals, and then repeated what he'd done in the afternoon meetings, as though she had thought of it herself. Rafe let it go. He had learned long ago that a man raising 2 children alone could not afford to be prickly about credit. Let her learn, he thought. Better she learn from the best. He did not understand yet what she was learning. She was not learning to sell. She was learning to be him, his methods, his accounts, his relationships, so that when the time came, the company would not miss him. The time came on a Thursday. The email arrived at 9 in the morning, plain as a closed door. The regional sales director position had been filled. Please join us in congratulating Celeste Vale. There would be a brief meeting on the 9th floor at 11 to discuss the transition. Rafe read it twice. Then he set his coffee down very carefully, because his hand had begun to shake and he did not want anyone to see. The 9th floor was where the carpet got thicker and the voices got softer. Rafe rode up in an elevator that smelled of somebody else's cologne and stepped into a conference room walled in glass. Downtown spread out below him, gray under a low sky, the river a dull ribbon between the warehouses. Celeste was already there, seated at the head of the long table. Beside her sat 2 men from upstairs whose names Rafe could never keep straight. And in the corner, saying nothing, in a chair angled slightly away from the others, sat Orson Vale himself. On the table in front of Rafe's usual seat, someone had left a stack of flattened archive boxes, the kind the legal team used when they cleared out a desk. Whether it was carelessness or a message, Rafe never learned. It didn't matter. The box would do the talking either way. "Rafe," Celeste said warmly, gesturing him into the chair. "Thank you for coming up. I know this is a strange morning." "It is," he said. "I want you to know how much I value what you do. Everyone does. You're the backbone of that floor down there. Honestly, I don't think the region runs without you." "And yet," Rafe said quietly. She had the grace to pause. The board felt the director role needed a certain strategic vision, a longer view. "That's not a criticism of your numbers. Your numbers are extraordinary," she smiled. "In fact, that's exactly why I need you right where you are. I'm going to lean on you a great deal these next months. I'll need your accounts, your contacts, the way you handle the freight men, all of it. We'll work closely. Think of it as a partnership." Rafe looked at the 2 men from upstairs. Neither of them met his eyes. He looked at Orson in the corner, and Orson looked back at him with the flat, patient attention of a man who had watched a great many people in a great many rooms and learned to say nothing until the end. Then Celeste slid the nameplate across the glass. "Regional Sales Director." She turned it to face her own chest and set it down. "So," she said, brisk now, moving on, "let's talk about the Hargrove account. I understand renewal is next week, and you have the relationship, so I'll need you to—" "No," Rafe said. The word landed in the room like a dropped tool. Celeste blinked. "I'm sorry?" "I said no." Rafe reached out, took the top box off the stack, and set it in front of him. He began folding the bottom flaps into place, one over the other, the cardboard giving that low, tearing groan. "You didn't call me up here for a partnership. You called me up here to hand over 5 years of my work, so you can wear my name like a coat. Fold. Fold. The answer's no." "Rafe." Celeste's voice cooled by 10 degrees. "Let's be adults. You have children. You have a mortgage. No, a rent, isn't it? A walk-up on the east side. You need this job a great deal more than this job needs you. She let that sit, the way people do when they've never once been wrong. You won't quit. Nobody in your position quits. Rafe set the box on the table, open now, square and empty, and looked at her. You've got that backwards, he said. A man in my position is the only kind who can. And he stood, took the box, and walked back to the elevator. The fourth floor watched him come out of it. They had seen the email. The whole building had. They watched him cross the gray carpet to his desk and set the box down beside his chair. Nobody said a word. The phones kept ringing, unanswered, because for one long minute, not a single person on that floor could look away. Rafe packed slowly. He was not performing. He simply owned very little. A framed photograph of Sarah laughing on a beach they'd only visited once. A crayon drawing Wren had made of the four of them, though there were only 3 of them now, because Wren still drew his mother in every picture, and Rafe would sooner have walked out barefoot than tell him to stop. A chipped mug, the battered notebooks, 5 years of them, where Rafe kept everything the company had never bothered to write down. Which foreman took his coffee light? Which buyer's daughter was starting college and would appreciate being asked after? Which accounts were held together not by contracts but by the fact that Rafe Calder had answered the phone at 10 at night when a shipment went wrong? All of it fit in one box. He carried it out past the reception desk, past the wall of framed awards with his name on more plaques than anyone's, and out into the gray afternoon. He set the box on the passenger seat of his pickup, where Posey usually sat, and he drove home before school let out for the first time in 5 years. That night, after the children were asleep, Rafe sat at the kitchen table with the notebook spread in front of him and did the hardest arithmetic of his life. Rent, groceries, the envelope for Mr. Bellamy, the number in the savings account, which was not large, and which had taken 4 years of skipped lunches and mended coats to build. He gave himself 3 months. 3 months to make something out of nothing, or crawl back and ask any company that would have him for a floor to sell on. He did not sleep, but near dawn he stopped being afraid, and that was almost as good. What Rafe understood, what Celeste, for all her strategic vision, did not, was that in the freight business, a company does not own its customers. A man does. The contracts had Meridian's name on them, but the trust had Rafe's. And trust, unlike a nameplate, cannot be slid across a table. He started with a phone and a folding table in the corner of his own living room. He called Hargrove first. Not to poach, he was careful about that. Careful as a man who wanted to be able to look at himself. He simply told the truth. He'd left Meridian. He was setting up on his own. If they ever needed someone who'd answer at 10 at night, they knew the number. Hargrove signed with him in 9 days. Then came the harder weeks, the ones no one tells you about. In the second month, a shipper named Doyle, a man Rafe had carried through 2 bad winters, stalled him at the door. "It's not you," Doyle said, not meeting his eyes. "It's that you're one man with a card table. My board wants a name they've heard of." Rafe drove home with that in his chest and did the arithmetic again at the kitchen table. And this time, the numbers did not work. The savings envelope had gone thin as a held breath. He counted what was in it, and then he counted it a second time, as though the sum might have changed out of pity. It hadn't. He sat there a long while in the dark. Then he made Posey's braids in the morning anyway, and packed the notes, and went on. Doyle called back 3 weeks later. A shipment had gone wrong on a Sunday, and the big name he'd heard of had let it ring. Rafe answered on the second ring. Doyle signed the following Tuesday, and never mentioned the card table again. After that, the tide turned, the way a tide does, not all at once, but so you stop noticing the fear. The foreman whose coffee was light came over, the buyer whose daughter had started college, the loading yards where Rafe had shaken hands in the rain for 5 years. One by one, the accounts came not because he asked, but because he had already, over long, unglamorous seasons, earned them. He named the little company Calder Freight because he had nothing grander to offer than his own name, and it turned out that his name was the one thing worth more than he'd known. Wren answered the phones after school, careful and serious, writing messages in his round 9-year-old hand. Posey filed papers by color, which was not filing at all, but Rafe kept every folder she touched exactly where she'd put it. The living room table became 2 tables, then a small rented office over a hardware store, cheap and sunlit, with a window Posey could see the street from. Meanwhile, across the gray city, Meridian Freight Solutions began to come apart. It happened the way these things always happen, quietly, then all at once. Celeste had the title and the office and the nameplate. What she did not have was the thing that had actually been holding the region together, and she had let it walk out the door carrying a cardboard box. The Hargrove account was gone. Then the others followed. The foreman stopped returning calls. A shipment went wrong at 10 at night, and nobody answered the phone, because the only man who ever had was 3 miles away, asleep at last, in a walk-up on the east side. The numbers that had been extraordinary became, within 2 quarters, alarming. Celeste gave presentations with longer views and larger words, and the revenue kept falling, because you cannot present your way out of a promise you never made. In one afternoon meeting, when the losses were read aloud, she said nothing at all, just sat with her hands folded and her chin high, while the room waited for the strategic vision that did not come. The next morning, the cleaning staff found the regional sales director nameplate turned face down on the 9th floor table, and no one ever admitted to having turned it. And Orson Vale, who had said nothing in that glass conference room, watched all of it with the same flat, patient attention. He was a man who had built a company from a single truck. He knew the difference between a person who could do the work and a person who could describe it. He had known it, in fact, on the day Celeste slid the nameplate across the table. He had simply been old enough and had watched enough rooms to let the truth arrive on its own. It arrived on a Tuesday, 10 months after Rafe folded his box. He was at the sunlit office over the hardware store, sleeves rolled up, helping Wren with long division between calls, when the door opened and Orson Vale stepped in. He wore a plain coat and no entourage, and he looked, in the small bright room, like any old man who had climbed 1 flight of stairs more than his knees preferred. "Mr. Calder," he said. Rafe stood. "Mr. Vale." The old man looked around, at Posey's colored folders, at Wren's careful message pad, at the crayon drawing of a family of 4 taped to the wall beside a photograph of a woman laughing on a beach. He looked for a long moment at that drawing. Then he set his hat on the folding table. "I owe you an apology," Orson said. "I let a thing happen in that room that I knew was wrong while it was happening. I told myself family was worth the cost." He shook his head slowly. "I was mistaken about the cost." "You came a long way to say that," Rafe said. "I came to say more than that." Orson lowered himself into the chair Rafe offered. "Meridian is bleeding. You know that. Half the city knows it. The board has asked me to fix it, and there is exactly one thing that would fix it, and he is standing in front of me with chalk on his hands." He almost smiled. "I want you to come back, Mr. Calder. Not to the 4th floor, to the 9th. The director's chair, the real one, with your name carved into the door and a share of the company under it. Whatever it takes, name the number." For a long moment, the only sound was the traffic below the window and the scratch of Wren's pencil, which had stopped. Rafe thought about the man he'd been 10 months ago, folding a box in a glass room while 4 people looked at their hands. He thought about the arithmetic he'd done at his kitchen table, the 3 months he'd given himself, the mornings he'd stopped being afraid. "I'm grateful," he said at last, and he meant it, truly. "There's a version of me that would have wept to hear those words a year ago." He glanced at his children, at Posey filing nothing by color, at Wren watching his father with wide and careful eyes. "But I can't take the chair, Mr. Vale." Orson waited. "When you offer a man a chair," Rafe said slowly, "you have to move someone out of it, and I know how that feels now. I felt it in my hands the day I folded that box." He shook his head. "I built this so that no one ever has to feel that on my account. My kids answer these phones. The men who work here left places that treated them like furniture, and they stay because I don't. I'm not going to climb back up a ladder by stepping on the next Rafe Calder on his way down." The old man was quiet for a while. "Then let me ask a different question," Orson said. "Not you back on my floor, my clients on yours. Meridian has trucks, contracts, warehouses, everything except the reason a man picks up the phone. You have the reason, and not enough trucks. Let the 2 companies work as one. You keep your name on the door. You keep your children at the phones. And no one, he added, with the ghost of a smile, gets moved out of any chair. Rafe looked at him for a long second, the way he'd looked at Celeste across the glass, but softer now, because this was a different kind of table. Then he reached out his hand, chalk dust and all, and the old man shook it. Calder Freight kept its name and its sunlit window over the hardware store. Meridian kept its tower and its trucks. And slowly, under an arrangement everyone in the gray city came to envy, it stopped bleeding. Celeste took a role that fit her, something with presentations and longer views, where no promise depended on her answering a phone at 10 at night. She was, in the end, not a villain. Only a woman who had been handed a thing she hadn't earned, in a world that too often mistakes the nameplate for the work. And Rafe? Rafe drove his children to school every morning and was never late. He kept Sarah's notes in the lunch sacks, and one morning at the gate, when Posey ran ahead to show Della a paper bird folded fresh that day, the teacher looked up at him again. That beat longer than she needed to, and this time, Rafe did not hurry off to his car. He stood there in the cold with his hands in his pockets, and he let himself notice, and he found he was not afraid of that either. You could bring them by the early room a little longer some mornings, Della said, if you ever wanted the extra minutes. He said he might. He surprised himself by meaning it. On Saturdays now, real Saturdays, the kind that belonged to him, he took Ren and Posey down to the loading yards to watch the trucks pull out, and the foreman would lift their coffee to the boss's kids, and Posey would wave with her whole arm. He had gotten everything the plan once promised. The better school, the yard, the Saturdays. But there was a lightness in it now that the plan had never named, and he had stopped trying to name it too. He simply carried it home each evening and slept beside it. There was still a cardboard box in Rafe's office. He kept it in the corner, folded open, the same one he'd carried out of the tower. Posey filled it with drawings. It held, in the end, exactly what it had always held. Everything that mattered, and room to spare.